if the fashion industry is to become sustainable, that has to happen in the manufacturing. It's the only way.
Does the industry need to be reframed? Hell yes, and quickly.
We're looking at the future of fashion.
Brands don't own factories, they're marketing companies that have their label sewn in.
With innovation, there is a lot of FOMO around it, especially within fashion, to kind of keep up with the pace.
The more you extract and the more you sell and the more you pollute, the more profitable you are.
The CEO's job is to increase profit margins year on year, and if they don't, they swap them out.
90+% of the impact of a garment happens in the manufacturing phase.
How much can we consume?
So if you incorporate artificial intelligence into your supply chain, you can tackle overproduction. Overproduction is one of the biggest problems that we have in the industry. I think it's something like 30 to 40% of garments produced never get worn and just end up straight in landfill. You can start targeting particular people with particular product, but you can also make it so that it lasts.
There are around 4 million employees in the fashion industry in Bangladesh. In India, the industry hires 25 million people. This is a massive, important industry. Those social innovations are the success stories of the fashion industry. Sometimes we reduce it to sort of environmental sustainability and we only look at it from our perspective in the West. When you think about just how powerful it has been in generating wealth, and when I say wealth, I mean women are earning money where they wouldn't have ever earned their own salary. That's innovation, that's game changing, that changes the lives of the next generation.
Today, we're looking at the future of fashion. So what better guest to have than the power couple, Brooke and Moin Roberts Islam. Both Moin and Brooke at the forefront of innovation and sustainability. So Moin, we actually worked together at the Fashion Innovation Agency at the University of Arts London. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Really, that's where it all changed for me actually and opened up my eyes to the vast range of creative innovation in the fashion industry. Can you just, start by saying your role and what you do at the FIA?
So I'm the Technology and Innovation Manager at the Fashion Innovation Agency. So we are a team based at London College of Fashion that is sort of an industry-focused team, and we go out and we work with brands, retailers and tech partners, and we put together collaborations, kind of proof of concept projects to show how emerging technology can disrupt business as usual and change practice within the industry. And we look kind of 3 to 5 years out. So it's looking at things that aren't necessarily industry ready, they're not necessarily scalable yet, but they're possible now and they're coming further down the line. So we're kind of there as a bit of a North Star to the industry, just to sort of show them, here's what's coming. These are the kinds of things that will be possible soon enough. If you want to get involved, come and ask us. And then we kind of consult for brands, and we do a lot of public speaking at conferences, tech conferences, fashion conferences, just to kind of spread the word. And we bring all the learnings back into the university. We do a bit of guest lecturing on courses. And my job is to go out and kind of go and explore these cool companies, go and find them and figure out what they do and figure out how we can put that together in a project.
Brooke, we first met, I don't know if you remember, back when I was doing my master's ages ago, because I was absolutely desperate to talk to you because I was reading a lot of your writing. It was always like meticulously researched. You always were such a source of truth. Can you just explain everything that you do within the industry?
So, as you mentioned, I'm a writer. I actually like to call myself an accidental journalist because I did get to this career pretty much by accident. Although I have to give you credit, darling, because it was Moin's idea. Why don't you write? But before I became a journalist around 8 years ago, I was a knitwear designer. And prior to that, I was a radiographer in the NHS. So I've had lots of different careers, but I'm definitely someone who loves research, loves details. I have a really strong kind of social justice compass. So I think sustainability and fashion are kind of really, it's a good area for me to kind of channel that passion that I have for understanding how things work and helping other people to understand how they work.
Your experience, obviously, as a radiographer, do you think that really plays a role within that understanding?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I spent many years working in the NHS in cardiac radiography. So I was kind of on the front line and helping with people who had heart attacks and taking a lot of time with the team I worked in to do research. So I really understood the meaning of gathering evidence, statistical analysis, and the importance of not getting things wrong. So I take my work really seriously. I was the same when I was a designer. And I worked in factories and I worked on materials and very much in the kind of the heart of the thing. And so I like to be the same way about my sustainability journalism, and I also write books as well about the topic. So rather than sort of sitting here in London and reporting, I like to go to factories. So I like to spend my time in Bangladesh or Vietnam or wherever I can go to get to where things are happening, to kind of to understand what's going on and then to share it with the world and with, you know, bright minds like you, Jade, you know, and hopefully helping with your PhD in some way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love that, and I love that you want to do things right and to understand. And we'll speak a little bit about that, about you know, innovation and what that means within the fashion industry. But Brooke, I was looking at your website, so I was looking at Techstyler. So we haven't spoken about Techstyler, so maybe you can kind of give us a little bit of insight to that. But you said you focus on signal and not noise.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really profound. And I think I know what you mean by it, but for the listeners, could you kind of explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. So I've got to give props to my very good friend, Sonia Kovakovic, who was working with me at the time. And she came up with that idea to perfectly encompass the concept of the work that we were doing and I'm continuing to do now as a consultant in this space, to indicate to the industry that much of the information that's out there about sustainability is incorrect. It's not evidence-based, and it's driven by marketing narratives. So much of what's presented doesn't really have any sort of basis in fact. It's made up. I'm going to say it plain.
Yeah,
so Techstyler is my way of consulting for lots of different organizations and cutting out that noise, you know, cutting out the preconceptions or the sort of urban myths, you know, the sort of fashion is equivalent to 20% of all pesticides in the world, and fashion is the most polluting industry, you know, after like aviation, or they're all made up. They're not based on anything statistical. And I am obsessed with details. So I love to dig in and find out what the actual state of things is. And that's what Techstyler presents.
Let's just kind of take it back. What does innovation mean to you both? And does it always align with sustainability?
It's just moving forward, trying to do things differently, trying to change, trying to improve. So that for me is always a good thing. Does it always align with sustainability? Sadly not, because innovation, it depends what your goal is when you're doing it. If it's to make more volume more efficiently, you can do that. You can improve those practices. You can, you know, make those machines that bit faster and whatever else. And if it's to market your products to more customers so you can sell at higher volume or for higher prices, whatever it might be, you can do that. There are ways to innovate towards those goals. And sadly, that's what a lot of brands do. They focus their innovations on profit margin. But you could also innovate to make things greener, cleaner, safer, more equitable, all those things. And again, there are some people out there doing that, and there are projects out there that kind of exemplify those values. But I wouldn't say they always go hand in hand. But yeah, people are always trying to move forward. No, you know, people don't want to stay still. Fashion is one of those industries that for a long time, it was a case of, oh, we've done this the same way for decades or sometimes for hundreds of years, and that used to be a source of pride. But I think people have come around to the idea that now that just means you've sat still for hundreds of years and you actually you've ignored the world, you've ignored progress. There are definitely kind of reasons to innovate, to move on, to change, to disrupt your business as usual. And you know, that's the focus of what we do at the Fashion Innovation Agency. That is exactly it, is to disrupt business as usual. So I think there's definitely a purpose to it. You just got to kind of make sure you have your motives set up straight to see whether it does align with sustainability or not, or just be clear and honest about what your goals are.
Brooke, do you want to add anything? Yeah.
Well, I agree with Moin. You know, I think that there's a misconception in some way that innovation is just universally good and adopted. But as Moin said, you can innovate for many different reasons. What I'd say is that in particular relation to fashion and in the production of fashion, there are many new innovations that have been game-changing, both in terms of process, so having a really great output in terms of a textile or a design, and that have also saved resources, so have required less energy or less water, for example. And that's a sort of sweet spot where the output is aesthetically, what you would have had before, but it costs less to make. And those are the innovations that fly. It's the innovations, though, that do have a better output maybe on the aesthetic side, but that cost the same or more, that don't get adopted. And that's where it's problematic, because the sustainability side of things then falls down. And I've observed this in many factories over the years, where the factories have been really bold and invested in new technologies, implemented them, and then brands don't want them because it means that the price of each garment that they purchase will be a few cents, and I literally mean a few cents more. Mm-hmm. So you can't ignore the other factors, the commercial factors, even the political factors that come into play in the world that we operate in that have an influence. It isn't just the innovation in and of itself.
Do you think that more strategies need to be put in place or understanding at the very beginning? Because I feel that with innovation there is a lot of kind of FOMO around it, especially within fashion, to kind of keep up with the pace and kind of do what other people are doing, or they're going to get left behind. And then I think that speed kind of comes with the price of the lack of understanding of what the actual impact is. So do you think that there needs to be more kind of things put in place at the very beginning of that innovation journey for these companies?
Well, I think something that could be put in place at the beginning is more of a collaborative approach to the innovation. So an honest and open conversation, for example, between a manufacturer and a brand about the nature of an innovation, so a decision can be made. And perhaps it would look something like the manufacturer would say, we'll front the cost, but if you just pay 2 cents more per unit, we can deliver on the product you need and also on the reduction in your environmental footprint. Let's do a deal. Rather than what happens in most cases now, which is that the manufacturer will do that to be world leading, to offer the best possible innovation with the hope that the brand will sort of take a slight hit. But, this is really where I mentioned the commerciality. The commercial reality is that brands are in business to make money. That's not a bad thing. It funds, our salaries, our lifestyles, our children's life, children's education. We sort of live and progress based on working in companies like this. That's not bad, but there needs to be a realignment of priorities. And currently, fashion brands prioritize the consumer-facing stuff. So the more narrative-led stuff, like if you buy garments from us, you can come and bring them back when you don't want them anymore, and we'll recycle them for you. They focus more on that, which stands to make no difference to the environmental footprint compared to changing a textile production technology like the one I was just describing.
What you were talking about, kind of reframing, is there a reframing needs to happen in industry? I think in a way there is. If we are focused on reaching sort of our sustainability goals and reducing the footprint of the industry at large and at a brand level, I think brands need to be held a bit more accountable in the sense that once you've got a brand of a certain size, brands, conglomerates, whatever it may be, they're beholden to their shareholders. At the end of the day, they're public companies. They've got to make money year on year. The CEO's job is to increase profit margins year on year, and if they don't, they swap them out. That's the reality of it. That is ultimately what brands are for. That is what they do. That is the purpose. They're not there to make beautiful clothes. They're not there to make the world a better place. They're not there to be more sustainable. They're not there to do any of that. They're there to just keep making money for the shareholders, ultimately, if we get down to brass tacks. And I think that's the problem. And I think if shareholder dividends were based on meeting sustainability targets, you would see the change implemented that needs to happen. I think the innovations that brands, larger brands, adopt are the innovations that make money. So if that's an innovation that makes things more efficient and keeps their costs down, and it's worth doing and it makes them look good, that leads to more sales. So let's go ahead and do it. If it's something that, as Brooke mentioned, costs a couple of cents more per garment, hell no, we're not going to do that, because that hits our profit margin. So I think that's the kind of bit that really needs to be addressed and looked at, is that kind of the financial setup of brands. And then sadly, another initiative, or another kind of initiative around the sustainability space, is greenwashing. Lots of brands have seen massive success with greenwashing. You call something a sustainable this, a recycled this, a partly recycled this, that and the other. You do a nice advert and everyone looks happy and there's pandas in the background or whatever. People love it, and then suddenly, oh, wow, they're a great brand, and people buy more and more of their stuff. These are fast fashion brands by any other name. They just market it better. And we have all these things come out, these initiatives, these drives, these pacts, these playbooks about how to talk about sustainability in a different way, how to talk about it's not about how we talk about it, it's how we do it. We are at the point now where the world's on fire, that's that expression that's out there. And we need to actually be doing stuff rather than talking about it differently. Reframing it is not going to change. It's kind of reshaping the problem, but the problem's still there and it's still growing and it's still, hitting us head on. So I think personally, that's what I'd say on that. Does the industry need to be reframed? Hell yes, and quickly. And we've got to stop talking about it and marketing it a certain way. That's irrelevant. We've been marketing for decades and everyone's been doing very well out of it. Now we just need to do stuff. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a bit too bleak.
Well, no, that's precisely why there's a huge shift in the regulatory and legislative landscape, because the way that businesses operate now, as you said, public companies are in the business to make profit, and that is at the express detriment of people and the planet. It's been set up in such a way that the more you extract and the more you sell and the more you pollute, the more profitable you are. And really, until that changes by some manner, there is no reason why brands should stop doing that. They're perfectly operating within the law. So this is precisely why eco-design and sort of regulations around what is legal as a design and as a material that's imported into the EU is changing, and there's a carbon footprint threshold being put in place for exactly this reason. And actually, to be kind of, again, brass tacks about it, it's because in Europe it's becoming so expensive to deal with all the waste, right? It's not that Europe cares about the countries that are producing and polluting their own, environment for our sake to give us all the clothes we need. No, Europe doesn't care about that. But Europe does care about the cost of cleaning up all of the clothes that we're throwing away. And we can't really export them anymore. Exactly. Colonial waste exportations sort of being shut down, thankfully. So yeah, we're having to clean up our own mess, and it costs a lot. And now you can see that the lawmakers are stepping in.
It's complex and it's wide. Actually, I'm going to dive right into this question because I can see you guys at home debating some of these topics. And I wonder, not to start an argument now, but has there been any disagreements that you've had between how the fashion industry can move forward with, obviously this is such a complex area and there's different approaches, but have you ever kind of passionately thought, no, we need to do it this way? Or
we're both very passionate about it. We both get very heated and we talk about it for way more hours of a day than we probably should. No, we're both very passionate. We feel strongly about it. We have ideas, but they generally tend to be in the same direction. I think we're motivated by the same things, about trying to make things better for people within the industry, and for the planet, obviously. And, obviously everyone needs to make a living. Of course, even the big dogs at the top, and they're all welcome to it. But as long as it's all being done in a way that works for everyone, I think that's our kind of driving force. So we tend to actually, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we just tend to agree, or at least be in the same direction on a lot of these things.
I think we do agree on the fundamentals, but I think we disagree on what should happen and how it should be done. I think I tend to be quite black and white about things, don't I? And I tend to be quite, I would say, insistent, or, I really drive my point, don't I? whereas I think you're a bit more subtle, and I think you can think around it a little bit more, maybe.
I think I'm just a bit more of a cynic. And that, you know, like Brooke's got ideas of like, this is how it should be, and if we did this, it'd all be better. And I'm like, yeah, but no one's going to do that because it'll hit their profit margins. And I'm always the one that's bringing it back to that, and the reality of kind of turning that big ship and getting behaviours to change, and changing the behaviour of capitalism is a nigh on impossible task, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that I often bring it back to. Brooke's got these wonderful ideas of how it could work, and you know, on paper, 100%. They would work if people weren't involved, but sadly people are involved. So we've got to make it in a way that is kind of incremental, kind of chipping away at the problem, changing behaviors one person at a time. And you've got to find an incentive. There's got to be an incentive for that behavioral change, or that kind of change in your production line, or that change in your practice. It all has to be incentivized, and until you find the incentive, people just will not do it. And I'm not just talking about brands, the shareholders, I'm also talking about consumers, people at home, people with the best will in the world that want to shop responsibly, and this, that and the other. If you don't incentivize it for them, they'll forget. They won't be as passionate about it. You know, it's not a kind of moral judgment, but people are complacent and people are used to their daily lives. People want convenience. It's just how it is. We're all set up that way. We've got so much going on in our lives that kind of adding in new thoughts, new behaviors, new practices, new guilt, it's a kind of conscious decision, and it's something that, to be honest, no one likes feeling guilty, so people shy away from it. You kind of dip in, and if you can kind of alleviate that guilt by doing something small, like sharing a hashtag, who made my clothes, and you feel better at the end of it, like, oh great, I sent that hashtag, so I'm a good person. You're not done, but it's quite easy to feel done, and those kind of campaigns work really well because they give you that kind of few seconds of like, ooh, I did something cool and I shared it and all my friends saw me share it, so I'm a good person. But if you don't then follow up that behavior with actual action, change daily, what difference has it actually made to the world, to the industry? It's, you know, kind of questionable. So it's about making those deeper changes but incentivizing them on a daily basis, and the actual reality of doing that is quite tricky.
Bringing everybody into the conversation, to this debate that we're having, and everybody's voice is heard. Everybody's voice. That's a really important one, because at the moment everybody's voices aren't heard.
No,
and you know, you go to the sustainability conferences and so on, and you know, they're almost invariably held in the West, and so everyone's got to come to here to talk about it. And you know, the voices on stage, it's the brands, it's the sponsors, it's a this, it's a that, and then they're kind of, you know, carefully curated. It's all very exciting and glitzy. And then you get a few manufacturers from Asia, and you get a few people from here, there, and everywhere. But they're not the main focus. They're not the ones people are excited to hear about or learn from even. That's not who everyone's come to see. Everyone's come to see, oh, Kering Group's here, oh, LVMH is here. And, you know, just listening to what they've got to say. What they've got to say is very predictable and very obvious. They're going to say something that sounds good and makes them look as good as they can, whilst happily carrying on business as usual. And, you know, I think those voices that you're saying about being represented, you kind of want to hear about the factory owners. You want to hear about the people working in the factories. You want to hear about what they need, because if the industry is going to get better, those are the things that really need to change. But it's so far removed from the end consumer. All we think about is, oh, it's on sale here for 5% more. Wait, I'm going to go and get it. That's literally as far as we get involved in the fashion process. And then occasionally there's a post and you share a hashtag, or you join a campaign, or you kind of, I don't know, throw your sandal at someone and kind of feel angry for a little bit, but then we just go back to our normal lives. Whereas for some people, their daily lives are affected by the fashion system, and it's quite convenient to ignore it.
I think to kind of throw weight behind what Moin was just saying, it's very poorly understood generally where the biggest impacts in the fashion industry are. And I think it's a surprise to most people to learn that most, and I mean 90+% of the impact of a garment happens in the manufacturing phase.
Right.
So once the product has got to the warehouse of the brand here in Europe or in the US or wherever, from then on, it's really only a couple of % of the total impact in the sort of the shipping and the distribution side of things. The use phase, so how the customer uses it, for how long and how they wash it, also has, you know, and it's not an insignificant impact. But honestly speaking, if the fashion industry is to become sustainable, that has to happen in the manufacturing. It's the only way. So we just need to understand that from the outset. And once we do, we then know that we can only learn what needs to happen next and what's possible next by speaking to the manufacturers, because they own and operate all of that side of things. Brands don't own factories. Brands don't own textile companies. They don't own any of that part. They're marketing companies. They procure finished products from manufacturers that have their label sewn in. Sorry, again, being brass tacks about this, but because I've worked in the industry as a designer, and I've worked in factories, I know how things are made. So when you buy something from a brand, it's highly likely that in many cases the brand hasn't even really designed that product. It's that the manufacturer is producing collections every season, presenting those collections to brands, and then the brands will choose what they like and maybe ask for a couple of tweaks, like we want an extra pocket there, or we want a different stitch length, or can you give us a different shade in this denim? But it's really, I think it's important for us to understand that brands are buying goods and marketing and selling them. That's how it works. So given that 90+% of the total impact of the product's happening in those other phases that they don't own, we need to ask those people the best way to make fashion sustainable, because they're the experts.
Yeah. I mean, it just sounds to me, what I'm getting from this is we need to dig deeper, and in a way, the truth is not sexy, and for a fashion industry that is like, this is an oxymoron, isn't it? Because the fashion industry is about having that conversation, what's great, what do people want to hear, what's good, like this is, and that's why you said it's more consumer facing, and you know, it's more of a marketing tool, really for innovation, to really make a difference, for sustainability, is to dig deeper and to go to the source. Yeah,
that's exactly right, Jade. We have to get out of this, overcome this mindset that fashion is this sort of really sort of emotive, creative, sort of cultural institution. It's not. It's consumer goods. It's consumer goods in the same way that, you know, cosmetics and skincare and electronics are consumer goods. You know, we have to be a bit less emotional about it, I think, and open our eyes up and realize we're being sold a lot of stuff. We're being told that we're better people if we buy certain things. And once we get over that, we can look at it at face value and say, okay, I'm buying a t-shirt, I'm wearing it 5 times and I'm throwing it in the bin. That doesn't make sense. Okay, what do I need to do about that? And what's going to make the difference? Oh, it's in the manufacturing. Let me think about that. If cotton's being grown, cultivated, spun, knitted, dyed, cut, sewn, why is this £2? How? I just bought a coffee for £3. What? Hang on a minute. This was made in Bangladesh. That means that there's like thousands of people involved in the production of this thing. Whoa. I need to understand what's going on here.
Doesn't make sense, does it?
Doesn't make any sense. It only makes sense if a lot of people make no money.
I'd just jump on one bit of that. The thing about, you know, it is just consumer goods. I agree. But I think there's a lot of brands, designers and so on that will kind of smart at those comments a little bit, because the storytelling is important, right? The way You know, because I'm sure there are lots of designers out there that aren't just like, I'm just churning out products. They've got an idea. They want to clothe people. They want to make them feel happy. They want to make them feel a certain way. There is a kind of romance to it. There is a kind of a higher aspiration to it. It isn't all necessarily just money grabbing kind of stuff. So that you kind of got to balance those two sides. That fashion is also storytelling as well as products. But what I would say is that the focus of the storytelling has fallen on the consumer, certainly when it comes to sustainability. You know, we're all obsessed with the idea of a carbon footprint. You know, carbon footprint came about because an ad agency, Ogilvy, came up with the idea of a carbon footprint because people were giving Shell bad attention. And Shell were like, right, we need to get this attention off of us. So let's figure out something to do that. So they came up with the idea of a carbon footprint, and then suddenly everyone felt guilty. We're all responsible. It's not the petrochemical companies that are responsible. All of us are, and you all need to look to your own practice. And that's greenwashing at its finest, right? And it's where it all began. And now with fashion, all of a sustainability discourse is, what can you do as a consumer? What can you do? What choices can you make? Can you buy responsibly? Can you do this? Can you do that? Why don't you just make responsibly? As Brooke just said, 80 to 90% of a carbon footprint of garments happens in the design and manufacturing stage. That is firmly at the door of fashion brands. 80 to 90% of the responsibility is therefore theirs. And yet, we are the ones feeling guilty. We are the ones having to make choices. We are the ones having to buy responsibly. We are the ones having to educate ourselves. We should say, no, just do your job properly. Do it correctly. You guys do things responsibly, sustainably, and then we're all doing it. Then we're all buying it. You know, that responsibility lies with you because you are putting those products into the world. So I think the discourse needs to change. We need to shift the guilt from ourselves and put it firmly back on brands and raise our expectations of them. That's...
Yeah, I 100% agree. And thanks for correcting me too, because fashion, you know, it's a beautiful thing. Like I said, I used to be a designer and I can see the love, I can see the passion in it. I think it's just that the industry at large is driven by commercial needs. It's driven by commercial motives. So the biggest brands are driven by something other than sort of the cultural and sort of zeitgeist related push and pull that can happen with fashion. But thanks for that, because it's, yeah.
But I think we all know with the fast fashion model, it's moved on from its quantity over quality. You know, that's where the attachment is, and the value I think now is mainly on like how much can we consume, not really what can we consume, and is it giving value to our lives, and is it going to last us, is it going to you know, I think that is, you know, fast fashion is driven that. When I was modelling for the fast fashion brands, it was kind of shocking me every time I turn up to work just how many clothes were, you know, I was asking to shoot. And I'd finish a rail thinking, oh great, I can go home now dead early. And another one would come through, and another one, they're like, oh, we just need to get this out the door, we just need to shoot it. Otherwise it'll be stuck in the warehouse, it'll never get shot, and it'll just, nobody will want to buy it. So it was quite shocking, the quantity, and every year it seemed to go up and up and up. That wasn't just in UK, that was in, you know, Tokyo where I was, or the US. It was overwhelming, and it kind of comes back to technology, and you know how technology has expedited this and driven fashion and down a very different path, also for good, because like you said, communication, people sharing hashtags. Without technology you wouldn't be able to kind of reach such a mass audience, but also it has been used to exploit, and in a very negative way. It'd be really interesting because obviously at the forefront you're seeing all the new technology come in, and you get to play with it and get to see what's happening. Is there anything that's really exciting you, any emerging technologies that are coming in that you think is going to be a real positive change for the industry?
100%, yeah. I'd say artificial intelligence is, or it has got the potential.
Controversial.
Has got the potential to be a game changer. Now, obviously, I know there's a lot of computing, processing, energy usage involved in that. But, you know, potentially a lot of that can be done through renewable energy. Chips are getting more and more efficient and, you know, less power hungry and so on. So there is a kind of a positive direction of travel on that story, but I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on what AI can do for the industry. And what you can do is you can tackle overproduction. Overproduction is one of the biggest problems that we have in the industry. I think it's something like 30 to 40% of garments produced never get worn and just end up straight in landfill. So, I mean, that's a massive issue. Why are people overproducing to that degree? So if you incorporate artificial intelligence into your supply chain, into your kind of putting sales data back into that kind of manufacturing life cycle, you can be more efficient, more targeted. There's companies like Hiran that use point of sale data and feed that back to manufacturers, and then at that point you can start making products that are released at the right time to the right people in the right quantities and at the right price, so that you don't end up with lots of stock left over that you end up then having to put on sale, or worse still, putting into landfill. So it kind of increases the profitability for brands, it increases their efficiency, it increases your kind of conversation with your customer. Frankly, it will kind of make that whole cycle a lot more efficient. So AI really does have that potential. If people really dig into the data, if people have a care to do that and look into that and really have the focus as reducing overproduction, producing things at the right time, producing things locally, producing things on demand. There's all these things that open up, you know, nearshoring, on-demand manufacturing, that become a possibility if you get the data right. And AI opens that opportunity to get that data right at a brand level, at a local level, at a global level, at a consumer level, whatever it might be. You know, even learning about consumer habits, your purchase choices, your kind of preferences. You can start targeting particular people with particular product, but you can also make it so that it lasts, so that these people who have these particular needs from a fashion perspective are serviced, but they're serviced well to the point where those garments last and they use them for years and years and years, and they buy less in the long run, but it still keeps things profitable for you because you're reaching the right people at the right time, at the right price, without stuff left over. That's the technology, the biggest one. There are loads of technologies out there, but that's the game changer for me.
I mean, Brooke, you've kind of touched upon this about, you know, innovation doesn't have to be just linked directly to technology, does it? So, no. And is there any innovation that you've seen, probably in the manufacturing side, that is really kind of, like, been positive change? I mean, it could be technology, it could not. Is there anything that's happened, like an example that you can think?
Well, actually, the one that pops into my mind, first of all, is from my recent trip to a group of factories in Bangladesh, which I mentioned. There's some really great training programs happening across some of the factories that I visited, where they are developing managerial and supervisory training programs for women. Because the industry is mostly staffed by women. There are around 4 million employees in the fashion industry in Bangladesh, which is phenomenal. I think in India, the industry hires 25 million people. So this is a massive, important industry, and it actually has already transformed the lives of many, many people in those developing nations. So anything that innovates on the training side and on the progression side, and also just to mention, by extension, a couple of those programs also send women to university to complete degrees, and then they have roles back in the manufacturing companies afterwards. And they also fund the livelihoods of the families of those women in those degrees whilst they're studying too. So those kind of innovative programs that allow social progression, I think, are transformational. Without this industry, in countries like Bangladesh, there aren't so many job opportunities for women. Most women are in rural communities, so they are either in agricultural work or in domestic work, where they don't have a lot of opportunities. So fashion has actually lifted, like, given women an opportunity to have a different kind of life and to provide in a different way for their children. So I think those social innovations, and I mean, there are countless in Bangladesh and also in India, countless programs of those kinds, which I actually think are the success stories of the fashion industry. Sometimes we reduce it to sort of environmental sustainability, and we only look at it from our perspective in the West. But when you think about just how powerful it has been in generating wealth, and when I say wealth, I mean women are earning money where they wouldn't have ever earned their own salary. It's really, that's innovation. That's game changing. That changes the lives of the next generation. You know, I met women working in factories who were paying the tuition for their kids to study engineering at university. You know, they finished high school. You know, everyone finishes high school pretty much in Bangladesh, you know. But, you know, it's hard to go to university. But they're doing it because they're working in the garment industry. So, yeah, that's the innovation I love to see.
On that kind of more positive and inspiring note, what are you guys working on now? Can you give us a little, you know, if you're not under NDA or anything, can you give us a little insight?
For me, you've said it, I'm under NDA, but I can give you broad themes. I can give you broad themes. Like, I mean, digital fashion in general, kind of, digital products, digital marketing, digital design, kind of trying to chip away at that 80 to 90% of the carbon footprint of a garment. If you're designing things digitally, if you're kind of manufacturing in more efficient ways, those kinds of things are some of the things we work on. And then just using those digital assets for marketing, for storytelling, for all the kind of creative, positive side of the industry as well. You know, we're not just focused on the kind of bleak stuff, also the kind of ephemeral stuff as well. Just storytelling, bringing digital assets into the physical world, bringing physical assets into the digital world, trying to make things more communicative, more personalized, customized, more engaging, more exciting, and hopefully with less impact overall.
I wish we could have talked more about digital fashion because it is a topic. We'll have to get you back just to speak about that, because I know, Brooke, that you said something really profound when I was sitting behind you in the audience, and you said, if our platforms are digital, why can't our clothes be? Which I thought was really interesting. I couldn't get my head around it. This was going back about 6 years, but I really starting to understand what you mean by that. But yes, we'll have to talk about that another time. Have to bring you back. But what are you working on now, Brooke?
I've got a book coming out in July, published by Penguin, and it is a one of those playbooks that Moin was trashing earlier.
Oh no!
Shout about that at home later.
We do disagree.
No, it's a book I've written with a brand, actually, laying bare all of their lessons from the last 15 years on their sort of road to dealing with all this stuff that I've been talking about today, and evaluating themselves and working out how to improve their practice. And so I've written the book to help them share everything they've learned, so that hopefully it helps other brands get on with things, get going on action, and gives them a framework basically to work from to improve their practices and reduce their footprint. So yeah, that's out in July. And apart from that, I'm consulting for a lot of manufacturers. I've got some really super manufacturers I'm helping to catalyze their innovation, help get more brands on board, help showcase what they're doing to reduce their footprint and increase transparency, traceability, all the good stuff. Yeah, writing for Forbes. That's kind of my sort of more public-facing gig, I would say, is, you know, I'm sustainability writer there. So I've got some big stories. Just had a big story on fast fashion, actually, and why fast fashion is being used as the industry's scapegoat and luxury is getting off scot-free. So have a read of that one.
I will, because I did just throw the fast fashion under the bus.
Everyone does. Everyone does, but you might not after reading it. It's,
interesting. Okay.
Like
maybe they're the easy target. I'll definitely read that. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your honesty. So refreshing. I've really enjoyed it. I mean, I've written down loads of things that I've taken away, but, you know, digging deeper, seeing the hard truths, having that collaboration and removing guilt so we can enjoy fashion for what it is, because fashion is important, especially for women, as you've said, Brooke. And yeah, I just really enjoy reading the book when it comes out and seeing what projects the FIA show to the world. So thank you.
Thanks, Jade.
Cheers.
Good luck with your PhD. Thanks.